Namaste and good morning everyone. We'll start our class with the prayers. Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Then we chant Mahamrityunjaya mantra 3 times, praying for those who are in suffering. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhana Mrityormukshiyamamrutat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhana Mrityormukshiyamamrutat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhana Mrityormukshiyamamrutat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome everyone. So today we'll start the class with a topic which we already discussed to a certain extent in the previous course, Sanskrit 01. So we'll cover that topic, a little bit of a repetition, a little bit of a new things, and hopefully it will help you to clarify some concepts. So the topic is pronouns. So we'll do the pronouns today. And we have already studied some pronouns. So for example, we have studied tat. So the pronoun is actually tat. And we know that it is in masculine, feminine, and neuter in all the 3 genders. And its forms are different slightly in different genders. So this is probably the most common third person pronoun. When I say third person pronoun, it means it has the forms in all the 3 genders, and this comes with the third person form of the verb. So we say saha gacchati, like that. Sa gacchati, tat gacchati. He goes, she goes, it goes, or that goes. This he, she, or that, it has to be taken into consideration that they are not really quite equivalent to English. So in Sanskrit, the gender is determined by the word rather than an object it represents. So, for example, tree, one of the word for tree is vruksha. So if you have to say that vruksha, you will say saha vruksha. You will not say tat vruksha. Even though in English, you will more likely say that tree. But in Sanskrit, we will say saha vruksha because vruksha is a masculine noun. And if we have to qualify, or if you have to refer it to by a pronoun, the pronoun also has to be in masculine gender. So that's the 3. Now, except two pronouns, all the pronouns are in the third person pronoun. So the two pronouns which are first and second person pronoun, you all are familiar by them. These are asmad and yushmad. So asmad is the first person pronoun, I. So I go, if I say I go, aham gacchami. You go, tvam gacchasi. So that's how the first and second person pronouns will work. That's all in the first and second person pronouns. You do not have more pronouns for first and second person. One for first person and one for second person. So that makes the verb table. So if you remember the verb table, we have this as our verb table. Gacchati, gachatah, gacchanti. Gacchasi, gachatah, gachatha. Gacchami, gachavah, gacchama. So the first person forms will only come when the subject is the first person pronoun. So if you say gacchami, it means even if you do not say aham, it will always mean that subject is aham. It is not explicitly mentioned, it is implied, but there can be no other possibility when you are using the form gacchami, that it has to be aham. Similarly, when you say gacchamaha, the only possibility is vayam. There is no other possibility. So that kind of makes the things very simple, that for the first person pronoun and similarly the second person pronoun, if you say gacchasi, that means you are referring to the tvam gacchasi, the second person pronoun. So out of 9 forms in a verb table, for these 6, the subject is always fixed. There is no possibility of another subject. The subject is fixed. This is either has to be yushmad or asmad. These 6 are the subjects. For those 6 forms, these 6 are the subjects. First person aham, avam, vayam, and tvam, yuvam, yuvim. So you see, out of 9 forms, for 6 forms, you know precisely what is the subject, because they are second person and first person verb forms. It's only for the third person that all other noun, millions of them, and pronouns, they are applicable. So only for this row. All the other, as I said, hundreds and thousands and millions of nouns and some pronouns, all of them are applicable only for third person verb forms. And those pronouns will be in the 3 genders. It may be possible that the forms in 3 genders is the same, but they would be in all the 3 genders. The second person and first person, they do not have any gender. Like when you say I, aham gacchami, whether you are a man or a woman, or even if you refer to it leaf who is saying aham gacchami, the same form is used, aham gacchami. Just by looking at the sentence, just like in English, if you say I go, you do not know whether it is a man or a woman speaking that sentence. Similarly, in Sanskrit, when you say aham gacchami, it means I go, until unless there is additional context, you will not know whether it is a man or a woman saying that sentence. Similarly, tvam gacchasi, you go or you are going, that also is common for all the genders. So these two pronouns, they do not have any genders. That means in all the three genders, the forms are the same. So this we have seen in detail, discussed in detail, that there are all the cases. It's only the first nominative case which comes with a verb form, but all other come in their own places. So by me, maya, by you, toya, like that. So today we'll see some third person pronouns. We already have an idea of asmad yushmad, so we'll see the third person pronouns. As I said, all other pronouns are third person pronouns. So one of the very common pronoun in third person is tad. Tad means that. And when it is used in masculine, it becomes saha. When it becomes feminine, it's sa, and it remains tad when it is in neuter singular. So this can be used as an independent pronoun like saha gacchati, or it can be used as a pronominal adjective to a noun. That means saha naraha gacchati, that man goes, in that sense. So I can say naraha gacchati or saha naraha gacchati. So when I say saha naraha gacchati, I have put, it would mean that man goes. Saha becomes an adjective to nara, that man goes. Naraha gacchati, a man goes. So it can be used as an adjective. Saha naraha gacchati. And as you know that adjective and noun, they will have the same gender. That's why if you are using with the naraha, you will say saha naraha. If it were nari, a woman, you will say sa nari. So in that sense, it's a demonstrative pronoun, like that man goes. And Sanskrit has 4 demonstrative pronouns. So these are the 4 demonstrative pronouns in Sanskrit. Mainly, I mean, there could be some more possibilities, but these are the main pronouns. So tad we saw, these are the other ones. Idam, we say for the things nearby. Idam. So idam pustakam, this book. Others we say for the distant things. Tad is for the remote things, and etad is for very near things. This is very relative kind of classification. It's not to be taken literally, like many a times you will find it to be used in different places where it does not quite hold to these meanings. So you just take it as a rough guideline that these are the pronouns and that's how they are used. Not to be taken in the sense like literally. Out of these 2 form the pair, tad and etad. So when I say they form the pairs, if you look at tad and if you look at the form of etad, the only difference is that they are actually preceded by the word a. That's all. All their forms are exactly the same, except that they are preceded by the word a. They are identical. So I'll show you. For example, if I take the masculine and copy it here, and I'll just hide these columns so that you can see. So now you see, saha becomes eshaha, because, so this is etad, and this is tad. Both are masculine. So saha becomes eshaha, tau becomes etau, te becomes ete. As you can see, this is saha and this becomes eshaha, because if it is follows after a, the sakara becomes shakara, the murdhanya, the cerebral sound. That's why it becomes esha. Similarly, tam, etam, tau, etau, tan, etan, tena, etena, tabhyam, etabhyam, tahi, etahi, like that. So that's how you will see that even though it's a new pronoun, but if you know one, you kind of know the other as well. And tad is used in the sense of that, like remote, and etad is used in the sense of this. And same way, if you look at, it would be for the other genders also, like sa, te, ta, esha, ete, eta, like that. Here, if you look at, there are some alternative forms. And those alternative forms are used when you are referring to something which is already mentioned previously. Like there is a context, and then you are referring to that particular thing again, you can refer to that as enam instead of etham. So if you remember the very famous verse of Bhagavad Gita, nainam chindanti shastrani. So nainam, if you look at this verse here, nainam chindanti shastrani. Nainam is a sandhi. It basically would mean na enam, nainam. That's what it would mean, nainam. So na enam, not this. Weapons cannot cut it. So nainam chindanti shastrani. Weapons cannot cut it. So because, so it is referring to the self or the soul, and because this has been described earlier in the previous verses, like kam ghatayati hantikam, if you look at all these verses, they are describing that self. So that's why Lord is referring here is an enam, nainam chindanti shastrani. It's already understood from the previous context that what does it mean. So in that context, one can use enam also. So all these forms, enam, enau, enan, enena, these can be used in that sense also, when it is already referred to. And they are only for the certain forms. They are not for the whole table. Like you don't say enabhyam, for example. So this is tad and etad. So they form the pairs, and if you know the forms of one, you can always know the form of other. So automatically, you see it, once your structure is clear for you, it becomes quite simple to add to your vocabulary. Then these are the two other pronouns, idam and others. Idam is used for things nearby and others for the distant things. So you will say between others and tad, which one is more distant? Generally, tad is more distant than others. But as I said, these are not to be taken as literally to be followed. Very, very, very subjective usages. And tad is far more common than others. Others is not commonly used pronouns. It's the least common out of the four. Idam is relatively quite frequent. And idam, so for idam and others, we have the forms in three genders. This is the idam. And masculine, for example, ayam, singular feminine is iyam, and neuter is same as idam. So when you see ayam, it actually refers to the same pronouns in masculine. And when you see idam, it means it's neuter. So very common to you have the usage of these ones. Not so much of others. Others has also three genders. So this you keep it for the reference. You don't have to memorize. At the most, you can just be familiar with the nominative because that is most common. Idam also, it is more common in the nominative than in other cases, even though it does appear in other cases. But in some cases, you can kind of guess. So like Sashti, if it says Asya, because you know it's like Ramasya, you can make a guess that it's a sixth case singular. Similarly, Esham, you will know that it's kind of, okay, sixth case plural because tad is saying Tesham. So like that. So it Ebhi, Ebhya, you can make but nominative, it may be difficult for you to make a guess. So just be more familiar with the nominative case. Ayam, Iyam, and Idam. So if you go to Bhagavad Gita, for example, and if you remember the 13th chapter, verse 1, sorry. Idam shariram kaunteya. This body. Idam shariram. This body. So that's how the idam is used quite often, because the body, shariram, this word is neuter. That's why the idam is used. So idam in the nominative singular. So these are the others is least common among all the four demonstrative pronouns. So not many usages. You can just be familiar with the nominative singular, so that if it comes, you can recognize it is the form of others. And that too, asau is more common. Singular is more common. This singular masculine is more common among all. Okay, so with this, I just want to see that if there are any questions related to the relative pronoun topic we just covered. So if there are any questions, you please feel free to write to me in the chat window. Okay, so I do not see any questions here. I think it is fairly straightforward topic. Then the next thing is, in Sanskrit, how do you make the interrogatives? So just like we saw yad and tad, the basic form of making an interrogative is kim. So kim is also another pronoun. And generally you will see this word ka, if it is prefixed to a pronoun, then it makes a question interrogative pronoun. So we saw this earlier, but not in so detail. So kim is also a pronoun, and it also occurs in all the three genders. Kaha, kau, ke. So kaha means who or what. If it is in the neuter, it will be more like what. Then ka would be who, referring to something feminine. And kim would be the same, like who or what, referring to something neuter. These are very similar. The conjugations of kim are very similar to yad or tad. So I'll show you that it is so similar that you can almost write the whole table of kim if you know tad. So look at this one where I have put I'll hide these columns for now. So saha taute, kaha kauke, tam tautan, kam kaukan, tena tabhyam tai, kena kabhyam kai, like that. So if you understand one pronoun thoroughly, you have a very good understanding of other set of pronouns as well. So tasmai tabhyam tebhyah, kasmai kabhyam kebhyah, like that. So that is very helpful, because when you see these words coming in the sentences and you kind of recognize it's a pronoun form, and if you see it preceded by kakara, that most likely is referring to a interrogative pronoun. So if I look at here, naraha gacchati, sa naraha gacchati, and if I change it to kaha, that means which man goes, who man, literally speaking, who man goes, but you kind of understand that it would be which man goes. So if somebody is asking kaha naraha gacchati, which man goes, you can actually refer to saha naraha gacchati if you already are referring that man goes. Like if there is already a context to say that man goes. So that's how it works. Or you can just say kaha gacchati, means who is going. You don't know whether it's a man or woman or whoever. In general, you can say kaha gacchati or kim gacchati. That could also be referred to. But if you know a particular woman, then you will say ka gacchati, who among the feminine persons is going. So it is not only the kaha, it is kim, come also. So just like tena by means by him, kena means by whom. So you say who, by whom this thing was done, you will use kena. If you want to ask for whom do you want to give this book, you will say kasmai. You will say from whom you want to receive this book, you will use kasmat. Or if you say whose is this, kasya, genitive case. And in which place, for example, if you are referring, in which place should I stay, then you will say kasmin. So the same table gives you all the typical interrogative pronouns which we use in English: who, where, what, how. Uh, so there are some other more also, like for how and when, which is not covered here. I'll show them to you. But most of the interrogative words are covered. So when you use these words in Sanskrit, the sentence becomes an interrogative sentence. So we'll see some examples of those. And this I have taken from Samskrta-Subodhini from lesson 7. So if you look at here, examples: kaha gacchati, who goes, who among the masculine, because that is the masculine pronoun. If you say ka gacchati, ka is the feminine singular. So it is conveying the same meaning, except that you are referring to a feminine person. Ka gacchati, who goes. Then kim khadati, what does X eat? So you can actually say Ramaha kim khadati, what does Rama eat? So Ramaha kim khadati, what does Rama eat? Ramaha kim khadati. Because kim becomes the second person, it's the object, right? So if you look at the table here, it is the same, whether it is a nominative or accusative. That's why we are using kim. Then kasmai yachasi, to whom do you give? Because kasmai is the fourth case. Kasmai, if you look at here, it's a fourth case, dative. So that means for whom. Yachasi verb you have already seen in Sanskrit-Subodhini. It means to offer or to give. So whom do you give? If you are referring to the female person, then you will say kasyai yachasi. Because it is kasyai. Kasyai ichhasi. Then kam chintayasi, what do you think? Or who do you think of? So this is interesting here, that if you say kam chintayasi or kam chintayasi, look at here, the tables, kam and kam. Kam chintayasi or kam chintayasi, it is the accusative case. So accusative case, kam chintayasi means who do you think of? Kam chintayasi, who do you think of? Feminine or masculine? So you can refer to this answer. If answer would be kam chintayasi, normally I could be asking this: if somebody is thinking of a girl, then kam chintayasi, or something is thinking of a boy, kam chintayasi, like that. Then kim chintayasi, that is in general. So neuter kim means what? What do you think of? So if you are not sure of what person is thinking, whether it's a masculine word or feminine word, you will use kim. That's a generic. So if it is in the sense of generic, normally you would use neuter. So if you say kim ichhasi, what do you want? So kim ichhasi, what do you want? Like that. Because you do not know whether what the person wants, is it a feminine noun or a masculine noun. So you can in general ask kim ichhasi, kim chintayasi. And these examples are available in lesson 7 of Eugene's book. So they are taken from there. So similarly, this other examples where these words can be used as an adjective. Kam naram pashyasi. Which man do you see? Kam prasadam gachhasi. To which palace do you go to? Kam malam pashyasi. Which garland do you see? Mala is the garland. So remember, when it is coming in the as a adjective, pronominal adjective, interrogative adjective, then you have to make sure that the pronoun has the same gender and same number and same case as the noun. Because in Sanskrit, adjective and noun, they follow the same gender, same number and same case. So if you say come, then you have to say, for example, Ramam or Pustakam, like that, or Kim Pustakam. Like this, if you say, by which book did you in which book did you read this? Let's say if I'm reading, if I'm telling you something, and you say, hey, in which book did you read? So you will say Kasmin Pustake, because Kasmin in which, and when you say book also has to be in the same number, same case. Book is also neuter, so you will say Kasmin Pustake. So this part has to be understood. Otherwise, you will not say Kasmin Pustakam. That will be wrong. So you will say Kasmin Pustake. In which book did you read? Because book, the in which is referring to the book. It says, so interrogative adjective you can say to the book. So that's how you make the interrogative sentence in Sanskrit. Fairly straightforward. We'll post this pronoun table in the repository. So whole pronoun table you can refer to from the repository. It's also available in the book Sanskrit Primer, which we are referring to, but as a table we will post it in the repository. Then there are some other interrogative words which are indeclinables. That means they do not have the tables. So they will always be, no matter what the gender is, what the number is, what the case is, they would always retain the same form. So that should give you some comfort that you don't have to remember which case, which number, which gender, nothing. So kutra, where. So when you are using this word where, like where are you going? You will not care whether multiple people are going or men are going, women are going. Kutra is where, it is an indeclinable. So where do you go? Kutra gach. So similarly, this one, qua, whither. To where. Kutah means from where. Kada means when. So there are a few words which are used as indeclinables, and they are used in the question mark, interrogative sentences. So Ramaha gachati, Rama goes. Ramaha kwa gachati, where does Rama go? Kutra gachati, you can also use kutra here. Ramaha kutra gachati, where does Rama go? Ramaha kada gachati, when does Rama go? Kada is when. So like that. Whether it is Rama or Sita, you will use the same. So you would also say it the same way. If you are referring to Sita, who is a feminine noun, you will say Sita kada gachati, when does Sita go? So say it will not change based upon the gender or based upon the number. It remains the same. There is no restriction on the word order. So this is as far as the how to make the interrogative sentences in Sanskrit. Then there are some other particles which are added to these interrogative words to give a certain meaning. So what are these particles? These are chit, chana and api. By itself, they may not have any meaning. Like api has some meaning, but when it is combined with something, it gives a little bit different perspective. And they all three work pretty much in the similar manner. Like from the perspective of usage, you could use any of them, will give about the similar meaning, and they can be used quite interchangeably. So if I add the word chit, kaha means who. If I add the word chit, it becomes kaschit because of the sandhi. Kaha chit becomes kaschit. It becomes the meaning of someone. Instead of interrogative, it becomes sort of indefinite. Someone. So like if you say, who came here? Kaha na raha agacchati? Which man came here? You can say, kaschit na raha agacchati. Someone came here. Some man came. Similarly, kaschana, you could also use kaschana. Same meaning, someone. Or you can say kopi. Kaha api. It becomes, because of sandhi, it becomes kopi. Kaha api, kopi, someone. So either of the three particles, when they are added, gives a sense of indefiniteness. It doesn't remain interrogative anymore. It kind of gives the sense of indefiniteness. You can put them in any case. So like kaha, kam, kena, not just with the nominative case, you can use them with any case. So kena, kenachit, by someone. Kenapi, like by someone. So like that. Kada means when, kadachit means sometime. So these three particles impart an indefinite meaning to the sentences. There is another thing also, that when you put na, that means not, before this na kaschit, like after these words na kaschit, na kenachit, it means at no time. So kaschit means, kadachit means sometime, kada means when, kadachit means sometime, na kadachit means at no time, never. Similarly, kenapi would mean by someone, na kenapi means by no one. So kaha means who, kashana means someone, na kashana means no one. So when you put the na after this indefinite, it becomes very strong negative. So if you look at some examples from Gita, so look at here. Kadachana, as you saw, kada means when, kadachita means sometime, or kadachana means sometime. It's like chana here is used. And if you use na kadachana means never. So here Lord is using another particle instead of na, it is ma, which can be used, but not so common. Ma also is a negative particle, gives the negative meaning. In some sense, it is more appropriate than na, but idea is the same. Na kadachana means never, never to the fruits thereof. So ma phaleshu kadachana. Similarly, if you look at Gita 6:2, here is the verse, nahi asanyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kasyana na kashana, no one. For none becomes a yogi here. For none becomes a yogi. Na kashana bhavati. Na kashana yogi bhavati. No one becomes a yogi who has not abandoned his sankalpas. So that's how this is used. And it is quite common to use it with the na to indicate that no one, never, by no one in that sense. So if you are in a Sanskrit, if you are reading a story, many a times the story could start with atha kadachit. Kadachit means sometime. So atha, if you add the atha, which is the beginning, it can become once upon a time. So atha kadachit pingalako nama simha. Once upon a time, a lion named Pingalaka. So I'll take the questions now. I just wanted to explain to you these. Okay, so there is a request here that could I talk about yaha forms? Yes, I'll talk about the yaha forms. Others is translated as that and this. It can translate as that. So others, if you look at others, it is distant things. So because it is distant, normally it is translated as that or he. So this is others. So in masculine, it can translate as he. In neuter, it can be translated as that, more like that than it. But again, as I said, these are not so strict. Depending upon the context, you will decide what would be the correct translation. There is a question, Salil Baba, I'm not sure. You said Edam versus Etad. I'm not sure Edam versus Etad. What is the question? So you can please write your question. I do not see Edam, anything Edam here. So there is a request, would be add this table to Sanskrit 02 other study materials, we will. So there is a question, can the answer to Kim Gachati could be answered in any gender? Yes, Kim is a neuter. So in case of you do not know, if you just want to know, if you are not sure who has gone, Kim Gachati or he or she or it, then you can just ask the question as Kim Gachati, who is going, and you can get the answer in the neuter, masculine or feminine. So there is a kutra spelling in the presentation. So is there a mistake here? Let me see. Kutra. So kutra is not there. Kutra is here. Oh, this is a mistake here. Thank you. So kutra. It is, the question is, qua does not necessarily has to be at the beginning of the sentence to represent a question. None of these interrogative words have to be at the starting of a sentence to represent a question, like Ramaha qua gachati, where does Rama go? So in English, we normally put them in the starting of the sentence, but in Sanskrit, there is no restriction on the word order, that it has to be in the starting or in the middle. So there is a comment here, Swamiji, we can identify so many words from Bhagavad Gita that are not clarified with this session. Evam sati uchyate santushto yena kenachit. Yes, so that is true. Santushto yena kenachit. That whichever way. So there is a comment here, question here. It seems that na for negation doesn't necessarily precede the word it negates. That is correct, particularly in poems. So the question here is from this, that I said na kashana. Here na kashana is separated by all these words. So it doesn't have to precede immediately before kashana, this negative particle. That is true. And more so in poems. In text, if you're seeing, it is more likely, not always, but more likely to be preceded before the kashana, but certainly not in the poems. Okay, there's a comment here. I'm loving these words and meanings, but how do we remember all of them? So you keep the tables for your reference, and then as you read more, get more exposure to like Gita and other things, and you refer to them, you will start appreciating. Just like another person said that now she can understand so many forms from Gita. So memorization always happens with the exposure. In any language, if you want to improve your vocabulary, you are not recommended to memorize the dictionary, but you are recommended to keep the dictionary as a reference and increase your reading. And slowly, these words will get into your memory and vocabulary. So Sanskrit is not much different, except that it is very structured. So you have to understand the structure, and that will help you tremendously to improve your vocabulary. So when is idam versus used versus etad? There is a question. So when is idam used versus etad? There is no particular rules regarding that. I'll see if there are any guidelines in the grammar books. I haven't come across any particular guideline when is idam versus etad is used. But I'll double check, and if there is anything, I'll update in the notes. But so far, to me, the way I have seen it, there is no particular guideline there, that idam versus etad. Okay, so with this, I'll touch upon another topic which we have covered in fairly good detail in the class 1, the Sanskrit class 1, and that was for the relative pronouns. So relative pronouns we saw in fairly good detail in class number 14, if I remember. Let me refer to the class notes here. So Sanskrit 1, class notes 14, I think it was. So relative pronouns. So we covered relative pronouns in fairly good detail. So you are recommended to go through this. I'll touch upon it, but you are recommended to go through these notes to jog your memory as well as see the examples of relative pronouns. So there are two clauses, relative clause and independent clause. I'll open it in the Word document so that you can probably see better. So these notes are available. So relative and independent clause. So in English, if you have like this kind of sentence, I see where the king lives. So I see is the independent clause. Where the king lives, you will not use it just by itself. Where the king lives will not make any sense. It has to be combined with an independent or called correlative clause. So I see where the king lives. So in Sanskrit, the pronoun is used as yad, which is a relative pronoun, means one who, and it also is in the all the three genders. And the beauty is, just like we saw for tad and kim, they are very similar. Tad and yad are also identical almost, except the first one, saha and yaha. You see, tena, yena, tasmai, yasmai, tasmat, yasmat, tabhyam, yabhyam. So it may seem like that there are a lot of pronouns and lot of words to remember, but if you understand the structure, it is extremely easy to understand all these and see when they are being used. So if you look at some examples here, which we have seen, like yaha pashyati, sa pashyati. One who sees, he sees. So one who sees, he sees. Yat sankhyahi prapyate sthanam. The place which is attained by Sankhya, by Jnana Yoga, tad yogairapi gamyate. That is also attained by yoga. So yat and tad. You see yat and tad. Yaha, saha, like that. Then Kriya Yoga, we have this logo. Mahajano yena gataha sapanthaha. It's a very popular verse from Mahabharatam, by which the great person has traveled, that is the path. So yena and saha. And here if you look at, it is in the third person singular and relative pronoun is in the first person. So that means it does not matter which case the relative pronoun is and the independent pronoun. They could be in different cases. So even in this verse which we chant, Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, you see Tasmai, to that Guru. So the relative pronoun Yaha is understood here. Yaha Guru Brahma, Yaha Guru Vishnu, like that. To that Guru I bow. It is in the, because of the poem, it is not mentioned explicitly, but that is the meaning here. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. So it's a very common formation, yat tad, relative pronoun and independent pronoun in Sanskrit. And because we have covered in good detail earlier, I would refer you to those notes, as well as in Sanskrit-Subodhini. This is in the lessons 7 and 8, I think, or I have to double check which, but I'll give you the page numbers in the class notes. So relative clause and correlative clause, yeah, I think it is in 7 and 8. So you can refer to those lessons. Yadi and tarhi, that is another relative correlative clause. So we saw just like relative correlative clause with saha and yaha, and they are with the different cases. There are also correlative and relative clauses which are used with the indeclinables. So they don't depend upon cases. And those words are like yadi and tarhi. They do not depend upon which case, which gender, which number. Yadi means if, tarhi means then. Conditional. Normally it is used in the conditional sense. So yadi Ramaha phalam vindet, tarhi saha tushyet. If Rama gets a fruit, he will be pleased. So yadi tarhi. So in English, you don't necessarily say then he will be pleased. It's understood because of the comma. So we don't include, but in Sanskrit, you normally do include the word explicitly. Yada tada. Yada Rama Graham Gachati. Yada means when. Tada means then. In the temporal sense, means in the sense of time. When you are talking of a particular time, when the time is the condition, not the another cause and effect, if and then here can be used for not based upon the time thing, but based upon a particular condition. But when you use yada and tada, it refers to the time aspect. Yada Ramaha graham gacchati, tada saha jalam pivati. When Rama goes home, he will drink water. He drinks water. Then, as I was telling you, that the relative clause and correlative clause, aham tam naram apashyam yasmai sa phalam ayachat. I saw the man to whom she gave the fruit. So you see here, this is yasmai, this is the relative clause. It's coming in the fourth case. Yasmai. And here it is tam. It is coming in the second person. So it's referring to same, tam naram yasmai. To that man, I saw that man. In English, we normally say the man, but literally speaking, I saw that man to whom she gave the fruit. Or she gives the she gave the fruit. Ayachat. So in relative and correlative clause, the cases can be different, or they could be same. It doesn't have to be different, but they can be different. So the one example here is aham tassai isprahayami yassai tvam isprahayasi. I long for her, tasyai. So here is the tasyai, tad. Tasyai. Tasya is the feminine form, fourth case. Aham tasya isprahayami. This is the first person singular word, lat lakara, present tense. So I long for her. Yasyai tvam usprahasi. For whom you also long for. So yasyai is the yat. Yasyai. So tasya yasyai. You can see the pairs. It's very easy to recognize. So this is the relative and correlative pronouns. You can refer to class notes of last class 14, last course, as well as read this book from Sanskrit-Subodhini chapters. So with this, so there is a couple of questions. So for example, yasmat would mean from which or from who. Yes, that is correct. Yasmat would mean from, because yasmat is the fifth case singular, means from whom. In the relative sense. Then there is a question, why do you have commas in the transliteration? It is the first time I see that. I have told multiple times that commas are put normally many times in the modern text to clarify the things, but traditionally in Sanskrit they were not there. So it's not a traditional Sanskrit thing, but have been taken from English language to make the things a little bit more explicit. And mostly in the text is still, like for example, if you look at Gita text or Ramayana text, generally they are not there. But in the books for learning grammar or to make the things a little bit easier to comprehend, people have taken the punctuation marks from English to make sure that the things are a little bit easier understood. So there is a question, so tad is always correlative and yad always relative. So tad can be used and is independent also. As I said, it's an independent clause. So like saha gachati, it doesn't have to come with ya. But yat clause is a relative clause. It will always come with a tad clause like that. Because so tad can come independently, but yat clause has to come with the relative clause, because yad is a relative clause Yat is a relative clause, so it has to come with the correlative clause. That is the thing. So relative and correlative. So yaha will, but saha, this clause, this is independent. They can come by itself. Okay. So from today onwards, regarding the class exercise, I have made a little change because I noticed last time only 3 persons really submitted the classwork from the class time. So it seems like it is not being found very useful by most of you. So I have changed from class exercise to class work so that you don't have to submit anything. You can just study these page numbers from Sanskrit-Subodhini and you can send your questions through chat window. So right now it is 10:06. We'll gather at 10:15 in 9 minutes. So there is no exercise, there is nothing to submit because I found that most of you are not submitting class exercise. So it seems like it was not very helpful step, and we have changed the format. So class work, it will be only class work, not the class exercise. So exercises only would be the home exercise. Okay. So with this, I'll mute myself, and in 9 minutes or so, we'll gather again. Welcome everyone. So there were some comments that you said class exercises were found useful, but you did not know to submit them, and also the time was short. So in any case, we will just switch a little bit the format. I understand the time was also a concern for many of you. Time wouldn't have been enough sufficient for completing and submitting the class exercise. So we'll just keep it a little light, classwork. And there is a question here on the classwork. So let me take that question. And that is in page 75. So the question is, there are 2 sentences here. Aham tasyai narye sprahayami yasyai tvam sprahayasi. Aham yasyai narye sprahayami tasyai tvam sprahayasi. So what is the difference between these 2 sentences? That is the question. So here he is saying that usually the noun referred to by the relative pronoun appears in the first clause of the complex sentence. So if you look at here, that's the usual thing. Usually it appears, but not the always, and it's not necessarily a rule which will change the meaning of the sentence. So the same sentence here I had written, this one, aham tasyai naryai. So what he has done, he has changed aham yasyai naryai sprahayami. So tasyai tvam sprahayasi. So here he has put the relative clause, the independent clause first. Aham tasya sprahayami. Here aham yasya sprahayami. So the woman whom I long for, you also long for her. Like you long. So tasya tvam sprahayasi. You long for her. So it has sort of reversed here. The first is here the independent clause and then the relative clause. Relative clause is associated with tvam, and independent clause here is associated with hum. Here the relative clause is associated with the hum. So the woman whom I long for, you long for her too, like that. So the independent clauses, so the meaning changes slightly. Here the independent clause is linked to the tvam, and relative clause is linked to the aham. Good question. So with this, I'll take a few questions which were submitted from in the emails. And even we may not have class exercise, but we will still have home exercises, and we would be expecting you to submit, and I will answer the questions which you submit along with the home exercises. So there are a few questions. There was a question, I have a question about this exercise, lesson 5, example 110 in Sanskrit-Subodhini. Since adaha below governs the genitive case, why is jale in locative case? So we'll open these exercises. I think it is 223. Or 222. Okay, here it is. So if you look at in the book, it says adhaha, this word adhaha is used with the 6th case. So adha means below. So essentially, like in English, you have below what? Like you normally specify a context, that below what. So in the same way in Sanskrit, below what? So that is specified, below what, that is specified by the 6th case. That's the idea. If it is understood in the sentence that below refers to something, you don't have to explicitly specify. So I see flowers on the tree, the flowers fall from the tree into the water below. So here you understand that below the tree kind of is understood. That's why you don't say vrukshasya adhaha patanti, like below the tree, but it is understood. Sometimes, so adha can be used as an independently as an indeclinable word also, as well as in the combination with a noun in 6th case. So adha means like don't go down, like don't go below your own prestige. In that sense it is used. So in that sense it doesn't have to specify the 6th case noun. It can, just like in English. So I want to grow, I don't want to go down. Like in English we say I don't want to go down. Down of what? Down from where I am. Like that is kind of understood. So in that sense also in Sanskrit it is used. Why is tat? Tad in Deshpande lesson 2. So in Deshpande book, the Sanskrit-Subodhini book which we are referring, tat is there, tad. And why is that so? That is the question. Because in here, when you see, when we do the tables, tad, we are saying tat, te, tani. And there in Deshpande book, I think it says tad, like the same as the pronoun. So just to let you know, in Sanskrit, for a given word, if it's ending in takara like tat, it can also be written as tad. The thing is that depending upon which word it follows, it will be either tat or tad based upon the sandhi rule. So tat is more common in the sense like it ends, if you just referring to by itself, you normally will refer to as tat rather than tad. But it's possible, and particularly when it appears in a sentence, the sandhi will determine whether it should be tat or tad. So, but as per the strictly as per the grammatical rules, Both tat and tad are valid forms. I just didn't want to give you too many options because that is less common, so to speak. Thank you all the team members for the beautiful classes. How to form Anvaya for a shloka. So we are doing these Gita classes and we are having the shloka and then we are having an Anvaya. Anvaya is the word order. So for example, this verse. This is the Anvaya. So this is the verse. Karpanya dosho pahata swabhava. We did in the last class Saturday. And this is the Anvaya. Anvaya means if it were written in the text format, how will you write instead of in the poem? So in Sanskrit, I had mentioned earlier that normally we have the subject, object, verb. That is the order. So first subject, then object, and then the verb. A verb determines the boundary of a sentence generally. So that's how you split the sentences. How many verb forms are there? Other than that, it is quite flexible. So if you know any Indian language, that is probably the best way to understand, like Hindi. The way you will make the sentence in Hindi, you will similarly make the sentence in Sanskrit. But like in Hindi also, there is some flexibility of the word order. Similarly, in Sanskrit, there is far more flexibility. And therefore, there are no very strict rules on Anvaya, how to use, but just general guidelines are there that subject, object, verb. And the verb is the central piece of a sentence. How exactly to pronounce Anuswara? This is the word for Anuswara. Does it have a nasal sound both at the end of the words and in between them? So right now it is coming to the time. Yes, it does have the nasal sound. We normally write it as this way, M with the dot under rather than M with the dot over. So they are in the older text, we did have the M with the dot over. They are just referring to the same thing, different transliteration standards by different bodies. That's where, but IA, so for example, if you say Ramam Gachati, so you see this is coming with the dot M, but in some transliteration scheme, they do with the dot ever, M with the dot ever rather than, it's exactly the same thing. The way you will pronounce it, Ramam Gachati, just like you will be pronouncing as without dot. There is a slight difference, and that probably I'll take it in the next class, that how the pronunciation and the writing may differ in this case. So that I'll probably take it in the next class, because today we are already pretty much at the end of the time. I just want to share a few comments. It may be a little bit over for our class, 5 minutes maybe. So this is, somebody is reading the notes and then getting a lot out of it. And these will be certainly good foundation resource when these classes end. And that is true, just like we saw the note 14 from the class note 14 from the last class. We are covering the relative and correlative clauses, and that is already very well explained in that class notes. So these comments which I am sharing with you, they are not necessarily because they are making the praise for us, but it's more because that it shows that your commitment and your learning, that you are able to learn from whatever we are offering. And then there is another comment here, which is also helping people to with some of their personal problems or psychological problems also. So this person is saying, I went on leave of absence and because from the virus and eventually lost my job. I was very unhappy, and then now finally came to peace with my situation. So And then this person is saying, even though I was doing exercises, but it was more as a robot than understanding, and eventually I gave up. But now I started with the first Sanskrit lesson and decided to learn properly. As I'm doing exercises, I will submit them. Thank you for your patience. So it's very good. Sanskrit is not something that you will learn in just one go. It does require a lot of repetition. It does require a lot of revision. So I think just like in any other serious subject, for example, physics, if you learn, it's probably very rare that you will just learn once in the class and it will be etched in your mind that, yeah, I understand everything. Normally, you have to go back, you have to revise, you have to reread it many times and solve the problems, and then you will understand the concepts more thoroughly. So this is another comment here where a person is saying that she found it difficult, but finally start getting the sense out of the meaning and will keep trying. And this is the beautiful part, that you send us the questions if there are any difficulties, but you keep trying, you don't give up, and eventually you will see that it will start making a difference for you. And then this is another person, now she is submitting the class 8 from the last Sanskrit Course 1, because I told you that if you are still lagging behind and solving the exercises for Course 1, please feel free to submit them to us, and if you have any questions. So you look at this person's experience, and then here she is saying that in doing so, I can say that vowel sandhi for me now, rather than a soup of rules, which is what I had in my head, has become more like a recipe, something that I can follow, and I'm very happy about that. And it has taken quite a few hours. So it does require effort. There's no question about it. Sanskrit is not difficult in terms of like if you are committed to learn and you are ready to put time for it. But it does require commitment, it does require time. And then you will start getting the meaning out of it, you will start enjoying it actually. So just wanted to share a few comments like that. I'm very happy that some of you have started. I have seen that more people have started submitting the exercise, so that's a very good thing. And those of you who have not been submitting, I would again request you to please submit, even if you are lagging behind, and you can submit your questions if something is making you difficult to understand the concepts. Just a little bit on the exercises for the home exercises for today. So we'll have lesson 7 from Samskrta-Subodhini. So what Tapasyananji, Swami Tapasyananji here has done, and it's a very beautiful thing he has done. He has taken these exercises and put them in the exercises for you, both in the transliteration and Devanagari. So even though it wasn't our plan necessarily, but he has gone an extra step. And so that people who are not quite comfortable with Devanagari yet and still learning, they can still follow the exercises in the transliteration and submit it to us. The content in the 7 we already covered today, as well as we covered in the last course. So it's more like a revision for you and a few new concepts. So even if you are lagging behind, you can still follow these exercises and potentially submit the solutions, because these concepts were already covered. So this is the lesson 7, and similarly for lesson 8 for Sanskrit-Subodhini, and this is the translation. And also what Tapasyananji has done, there is a write the declensions. He has already provided a table, a skeleton, so that all you have to do is you can just fill up the forms. So even if you are doing it manually, writing by hand, you can print these pages and fill them manually and submit it to us. If you are doing on computer, of course, it becomes very easy. You just fill it in. So thanks to the Tapasyananji, he has taken quite a bit of pain just to make the things easier for you. And then we have lesson 9. So there are 3 exercises, 7, 8, 9. They may look like a lot, but it's not, because most of the concepts are already very familiar to you. It will be a lot of revision and a little bit of some new concepts. So it should not be so difficult for you to solve these exercises. And this will give you a very good understanding of the different verb forms, different nominal forms, once you go through these. So let me just quickly see if there are any questions. We are 5 minutes. Okay, so there is a question here. Thank you for sharing the comments. It is nice to see how Sanskrit has helped us in many different ways. Yes, thank you. And it says, would you please give us an exercises for the class again? Really help me to apply the knowledge and get question answer in real time. The thing is that class exercises, most likely we will not start, because it does require a lot of effort on my part to prepare the class exercises so that it can be done in a very limited time with a limited vocabulary. And different people have different understanding and they are at different levels. So class exercise to cater to something which is, even forget all, even to a majority of the class attendance, it becomes extremely difficult. And that's probably one of the reasons why most of you have not been submitting the class exercises. So we will have the home exercises so that you can take your time, solve those exercises and submit it to us the questions. So there is a question here in 11 exercise 3 chapter 6. They use virasya nrupasya gunan. Is this common or would they use a samasa? So whenever there is a possibility of a samasa, you can always, no, I mean, I should not say always, because in Sanskrit there are always exceptions. But generally samasa is an optional thing. So you can say virasya nrupasya gunan, or you can say vira nrupasya gunan. So generally it can work both ways. So there's a comment that I had done class exercise, but I thought they were not to be submitted. That's all right. Please don't worry about it. You can submit the home exercises, and that should give you a pretty good understanding, because home exercises are really thorough. So with this, we'll close the class. And please do solve these exercises, home exercises. You will understand that how these things are applied. And the exercises from these Sanskrit-Subodhini, they are more thorough than what we were doing in class 1. So they will give you much better understanding of the different forms which you have studied, of the different verb forms and other things. So with this, we'll close the class with the prayers. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all.